Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello and welcome. It is Friday the 15th of August. It's about 9:30 at night and I have just got in. I was planning to do this episode from up at the plot, but with one thing and another, it just did not happen. So I had two issues this evening. One is that I'm going to collect more water to fill up IBC1 first thing tomorrow morning. And to do that, I wanted to empty out the water that is in it so that when we bring the 850 litres tomorrow, it's not going to overflow. So I had to get it from IBC1 to IBC2. And there wasn't enough volume of water in IBC1 to just kind of force the water down the hose pipe and then up the little incline to get into IBC2. So nothing was happening. So in the end, I just took the hose out of IBC2 and put it in a dustbin and filled it up that way. That was that. And then one of the little tiny ducks, Dolores, she's having some kind of breathing difficulties tonight. So she was a little bit off colour this morning. And then she's really kind of not happy this evening at all. And it could be because she's very old, or something's happened during the course of the day that I don't know about. So I've washed all of her face and cleared her nostrils and put a special tray down in their house so that she can just try and cool herself down, because it could just be that she's overheated today for some reason. Everybody else is fine. But Dolores has always been a little bit not sickly. She's perfectly healthy, but she's always had a bit of a tough life because she's got angel wing, which is a condition where they have a vitamin deficiency when they're babies and their wing kind of droops down. So she's got, it doesn't droop, like half her wing just sticks out at 90 degrees. And I used to trim it down, but then it just looked like she was hiding half a wing under her wing and she just looked really odd. So now I just leave it. And I was given them a couple of years ago after my first ducks were stolen, and she lived with an elderly gentleman, and I think he got them when she already had this condition, because it happens literally when they're a few weeks old. Anyway, I digress. This is not about ducks or anything else, but the point is I was going to do a really lovely relaxed episode on the plot this evening, watching the sun go down, and then these curveballs just come out of nowhere, and everything gets derailed. So I'm doing it at home, which is great in a way, because I am back to inches away from my fan because it is hotter than Hades in here. So welcome to the episode. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've had a good week. I don't know where the week has gone, to be honest. 1 minute ago, it was like Tuesday. And I was talking to a young guy that I work with on Wednesday, and he was saying, "Oh, I don't know how it's Wednesday already." And I said, "Listen, my friend, you wait till you get to my age and you wake up, and then it's pretty much the week is over. I don't know how it's even the middle of August. I don't even know where July went. I remember May, because May just kind of went on forever and ever and ever. And now here we are in the middle of August. So another week, another heat wave, another crazy watering, and is everything going to make it? And even stuff in my garden is flagging now. It's just been a real week, and it's very sweaty as well. It's very humid. Luckily, I don't have any hydrangeas in the shower tray, so I can cool down. So I think no more navel gazing this week. I am not going to bore you anymore with me moaning about how terrible a job I'm doing of this cut flower business. We are going, it's a royal we again. I am going gung ho forwards. So after my last episode, which was probably still another mopey one where I'm moaning, I had a really lovely message from a lady called Donna in the States on Instagram. And she had been listening to a couple of the episodes, and she sent me a recommendation for a lady to follow on Instagram who also runs courses and who has also done a book. And that lady on the Instagram is Lennie Larkin, and she does a book called Flower Farming for Profit. It is apparently the complete guide to growing a successful cut flower business. And funnily enough, I already followed Lennie Larkin on Instagram. But I thought, Donna's onto something here. I will do a bit more research. And I have managed to pick up a copy of Lennie Larkin's book, which wasn't supposed to be arriving till tomorrow, but it came today. and I have opened it. And I have to confess, I bought a second-hand copy because a lot of these books, they, tremendous amount of work has gone into them, but they are quite an investment. So this one is like 45 US dollars or 40 Great British pounds. And it's a beautiful book. It's really big and lots of color photos. And I have a horrible feeling I'm going to stay up all night reading this. And then when I started looking into books, because I have to say, when I was first starting out with this, I did look at some book options. And I must say, I was looking at British books because I'm here in the UK, and they were all, for my budget, expensive. Now, I'm sure they're not expensive, but if you're starting out like I was with a sort of a budget of like, well, it was dust basically. I thought, am I going to spend £40 on a book, or am I going to spend £40 on seed? And it was a bit of a no brainer, really. It had to be the seed. And I have been, excuse me, I have been relying quite heavily on lots of free information from the internet, from YouTube, from Instagram, from podcasting. But clearly, I've hit a bit of a brick wall, and it was time to get back into the whole learning a bit more and not thinking that just because I'm a grower and a gardener that I know what I'm doing. Because as I've been listening on the internet recently, about 25% of cut flower farming is knowing what you're doing with the plants and the seeds, and the rest of it is all business skills. And that is definitely what I am lacking. So I then ended up finding a lady called Lisa Mason Ziegler of the Gardener's Workshop. She has produced a book called the Cut Flower Handbook, which, let me see, yeah, this is 30 US dollars, 22 UK pounds. This is a beautiful book. It's a little tiny fraction. Oh no, it's the same size as Lennie Larkin's book, but this one is a hardback book, and this looks absolutely incredible. So I downloaded loads of Lisa Mason Ziegler's podcasts, and I have been listening to them. In fact, on Thursday, I managed to listen to 7 hours of content because a few of my gardening jobs, which I've had to pick up because I haven't made tens of thousands of pounds from the cut flowers, unsurprisingly. And they don't have signal where I'm working, so you can't just stream anything. You've got to have it downloaded. So you have to be organised, and I normally manage to do that while I'm having my coffee in the morning. I get a great long queue of podcasts, and then I just work my way through them, and then I save some. And then if they're in my download section, I can just listen to them over and over again until I've got the point. Excuse me. So Lisa Mason Ziegler's book, The Cut Flower Handbook, that arrived this morning as well. So, I've got a bit of a dilemma about which one I'm going to start with. But massive, massive thanks to Donna for sending me that message, because you've really kicked off a new era now, which is where I'm going to go through these books and listen to all the podcasts and really, really drill down into making this a cut flower farming business rather than me just making, I think, the classic mistakes. Because, as I say, I listened to 7 hours of Lisa Mason Ziegler, and she was talking about gardeners turning into cut flower farmers and how they're like the worst kinds of people in a way, because we come at it from a completely different perspective that I think has made me make mistakes that I perhaps wouldn't have made if I'd come at it from a different perspective, or I'd gone on a proper course like the Floret one, which I know people who have done. So I kind of thought that I was being clever and thinking, oh, well, I know how to do all of this. And in reality, there have been lots of brick walls because of the background and because I haven't looked into the business side of it enough. And I've learned so much this week. I learned something called retained earnings. I'm sure you know what that is. I didn't have a clue what that is. It's money that you actually keep from the money that you earn, and you just hang on to it, like in a savings account or anywhere, in an envelope under your bed if you want to, but you don't spend it. Because one of the things I have learned this week that Lisa Mason Ziegler says quite a lot is, do not just take all of your earnings for the year and rush out and buy new plants. And I'm really glad she said it over and over and over and over again, because I'm the sort of person that's like, oh, I've made this much money, I'm just going to go and buy some more. because I have already, as you know, bought my sweet peas and some zinnias and some cosmos for next year. And that was really silly because I just, yeah, need to rein that in. So I've submitted my availability list to a lady organising this flower festival, which is happening not this weekend, but the one, no, not the one after. It's the one after that. So it's the last weekend in August, and it's sounding very, very exciting. So I sent that to her this morning, along with some photographs of what I've actually got, and she's got back to me and said yes, she wants this, but she wants this, and then this color and that color. So that is pretty much all sorted. And now it's just a question of watering and deadheading. And we're going to have temperatures, I think, staying around the 26 degrees for certainly the next 6 days. So it's going to be challenging to stop everything going over. And also, she asked me for a press release because she's going to be doing some PR for this event. And I thought, oh, press release, yeah, no, not a clue. So I have to say, I put that into Chat GPT and I said, give me a press release based on this page of my website. And Chat GPT takes what, less than 5 seconds, and it came back with a great press release. And it also scraped all the data from my website and did all of this other stuff as well, and gave me a 1-page A4 document. Now, I know there's lots of people talk about ChatGPT and they won't use it because they don't want to use AI, and they also don't like it because it consumes lots of water and the servers take heat and energy. And I understand all of that. And there are lots of arguments on either side. But very now and then, it is an absolute lifesaver. And if you haven't used it and you're not totally anti using it, I would say at least give it a go to understand the potential, because I could have spent all day, which is the day I don't have, trying to come up with some kind of, press release for this thing, and just got into an absolute mess. And I know it's not the most important thing in the world, but I feel very lucky to have been invited to take part in this event. And it's an opportunity to showcase my flowers to people who are actually paying to come and visit. So not only is the pressure on to deliver great flowers for an event that lasts 3 days, unlike my weddings that I've been supplying for, where things only have to last one day, but there are going to be people coming who are going to see my logo and read about me, and it is going to be broadcast on local radio, and various other people are going to be doing PR for it. So it's kind of important that I got things right, if that makes sense. I'm not going to put myself under any undue pressure because they are still flowers at the end of the day, but it is an important moment for me. And I want to make sure that everything is, that I at least do it as properly as I could do it. What else was I going to tell you about? Oh, yes, we're doing this water transferring tomorrow from the new place that I'm getting water, rather than my other half's house, and taking it in his van. And then we're using the new pump to pump it out of the back of his transit van into IBC1. And we have ordered a section of fat hose pipe. So if you are a regular listener, you will know for some reason he went and bought about 2 meters of fat hose that goes from the wheelie bins to the pump. And then we had to use a normal household hose pipe to go from the pump up to IBC1. And of course, the diameter of the regular hose pipe is very, very narrow. So it kind of throttled how much water could actually pass through it. So we made the executive decision that we needed to go and buy about 20 meters of fat hose, and apparently it had to be reinforced because my other half was very worried that it was going to kink and it was going to do this, that, and the other. And I said, listen, we're not spending a fortune on this because we shouldn't have to do it that often. We're just in extreme conditions at the moment. So if anything looks like it's going to kink, we'll just peg it down with tent pegs, or I'll stand on it. So let's just get anything ordered as long as it's fat. So we have done that, and it is coming tomorrow. Fingers crossed, we'll be testing it. Now, this evening, the reason that everything is kind of running late is because my Dahlia mentor, Richard Bailey, organised his annual Dahlia Talk on his allotments, and he invited me to go along this year. So I went along, took the mothership. She came with me. We took 2 fold-up chairs and a bottle of cold water with elderflower cordial, which was very nice, and some glasses. And we were joined. There were about a dozen of us, and Richard had his table out and plants to demonstrate everything. And honestly, he could talk for about a week, to be honest, because he's the expert, and he's a very, very accomplished grower and exhibitor. He's won, so much stuff. I'm not describing it very well because he did tell me, he told all of us this evening how good he is, and he really is excellent. So it was tricky for him to fit everything in to an hour and a half, to be honest. But the very last bit he did was how to stage the dahlias, which is interesting for me because I'm thinking about putting some of mine into my local show in a week. Yeah, oh crikey, that's come around quite quickly. So that was quite interesting. Although I need to source some agra wool to put inside the bikini vase. I mean, just even the language on this stuff is absolutely mental. So many new words to learn. I don't want to use oasis in them, which is what is very, very common. It's now Oasis has actually now been banned by the Royal Horticultural Society for use in their shows, but for local shows, you are still allowed to use it. But I don't want to use it because it is really nasty stuff, just horrid. I hate it. So I need to get hold of some agra wool, which is like the new thing for environmentally friendly ways of doing it, and have a practice with that because apparently there is a knack to using that. So yes, it was an excellent, excellent talk. And I mean, I have been mentored by Richard for over a year now. So he didn't say anything tonight that I didn't already know, but it was lovely to see him doing the presentation and listening to other people's questions about the things that kind of puzzle them most about dahlias and what they want to learn more of. So um yeah, no, I've got a list here because I can't remember everything that I want to tell you and I don't want to forget anything. So I've made a list of my main takeaways or learnings so far this year. Now, actually, there are probably an awful lot, but I've distilled it down to 5, and I'm going to tell you what they are in case you're at a place where you're thinking, I would love some just helpful ideas or something. Now, I'm not an expert and I don't pretend to be in any sense of the word, but I want to share my learnings with you as I go along, just in case they're helpful. So, number one, plant spacings. I have mentioned this before. I have planted nearly everything far too close together, unless I thought it wasn't going to survive. And then obviously it's done really well. So the mistake I have made is planting everything far too far away, far further than is sensible for a cut flower grower. And having visited 2 other growers so far this year and seen how close everything is, jam packed, literally right up against each other, I realize now when I go and look at my plot and I see these enormous gaps between everything, and I just think, what was I thinking? So if you're sowing anything, just ignore what it says on the packet and just literally jam everybody in together, because not only does it mean that you can fit more plants into each space, they all support each other. So you don't have to end up doing ridiculous string tapestry board things that I've done. They all support each other. And I think actually the competition is probably quite good because thinking about it, in my garden, I plant incredibly close together because if you want that a garden that looks like it's been around forever, you want that Chelsea look, you can't wait 5 years for a shrub to fill out its space. So you just cram everything in together. It all grows, all the leaves grow through. It looks absolutely amazing and you can't see the soil, so you don't ever have to weed. So I do that in my garden already, but for some reason I went up to the plot and I was like, oh, what's the ideal spacing for this seedling? And then I did what it said. And in fact, I started when I was doing my successional ones to put them a little bit closer, but nowhere near close enough. So my top tip is plant them really super close together. Number 2, staking. Now, I have also mentioned this before, but I have made a colossal mess of my staking. And for some reason, everything's just got really tall this year and taller than it's supposed to as well. And because I haven't planted things close enough together, they've had the opportunity to kind of wiggle around and move. And I have got this woodland up behind the plot. And of course, a lot of the plants have tried to get away from the woodland. I mean, the trees don't come over the plot. And I've seen some people's plots and they're growing underneath the trees, which I just think is amazing. But my guys are like, oh, we're just going to move out of the shade. So they're all on the lean. And I didn't get my stakes in soon enough. By the time I tried to, of course, the ground was absolutely rock solid and you couldn't get anything in anyway. And I also don't have an enormous soil depth because I'm on this chalky ground. So I've only got, in some places, like 50 centimeters of soil, not very much at all. So definitely get your stakes in before the plants or seedlings as well, so that you're not clambering around trying to smack things into the ground like stakes and stuff and risk damaging any of your plants. And make them easier to increase the height as the plants are growing up as well. And in my case, I need to make sure, well, not make sure because it's standard practice for me, but I need to make sure that I don't use any plastic netting or anything like that. So that is that. And definitely make it more robust than you think you're going to need. That's also a mistake I made. I put bamboo canes in, bits of string in, and then suddenly you've got 20 or 30 plants that all lean on them, and you get a bit of wind and a bit of rain, and the whole lot kind of just keels over. Now, for some of the things like the scabious, it's not the most important thing in the world. Like, it doesn't really matter because I like lots of wavy stems. It's not just because I'm bad at staking. I happen to actually like it. And I have never marketed myself as, well, hang on, that's a sweeping statement in itself. As you know, I'm terrible at marketing, don't really do any of that either. Um, but I have never sort of said, oh, yes, they're all going to be poker straight stems and they're all going to be like 80 centimeters tall. Like, I've gone with a very natural style. So for me, I don't mind if they fall over a little bit and then you get some kinks. You get some really, really fantastic stems that way. But what's not good is when you get like 10 or 12 achillea plants that just literally keel over a 45-degree angle, and then you just got an absolute mess that is almost impossible to sort out. Number 3, keep your paths wide and clear. So I made a terrible mistake with this. This is because I did not do a professional course at the beginning. It's also because I don't think I switched my brain on at the beginning. And it's also because I have gradually created a bigger plot as time has gone on. So I started out with a few beds last year, my little trial beds, and I've gradually sort of stolen bits of the field, borrowed bits of the plot that the chickens were always running around in. They've moved somewhere else. And I've sort of gradually sort of made the growing space bigger and bigger. And it's not till I got Nigel, the turf lifting man, in earlier in the year when I've actually got a really nice big rectangle and I can get 4 really beautiful wide beds in there. And I'm going to make sure that the paths are wide and accessible. Now, I would love to be one of those growers that has space for one of those little metal carts or trolleys with wheels, you know, like the things that you take if you're going to go to a festival. I see growers with this and I'm like, oh my God, I want one. And one of my growers in this group that I'm in, actually, who I went to visit, she's got a pink one and it's so gorgeous. I want one of those. I really do. Um, so I'm just mental note when I do this area that Nigel cleared is to make sure that the paths are super wide and also to keep the edges really nicely defined, because I know as a gardener, like if you don't have time, if you're rushing, and I'm not rushing when I'm at work, I'm all very calm. I'm just rushing always to do the podcast. But if you don't have time to do anything else, there's 2 things I always say: sweep the paths, sweep like doorways and entrances and terraces and patios, and use your shears to put a really sharp edge on your lawn or whatever the border, whatever comes up against your border. And if you do those 2 things, you can make like a really enormous impression, almost a bigger impression than if you just jumped in the beds and started cutting stuff back. So that is a really helpful tip, and I try and remember that when I'm up at the plot and edge mine, because for some reason some of my actual beds are lower down than the paths. And when the grass grows over the path and the edges aren't clear, you step on what you think is an edge and you actually lurch off the side. And that way, I'm going to end up with a twisted ankle. So keep edges defined. Allow space for the cart or the trolley to go up, even if you don't have one. You never know. You might need one in the future. Wide enough for a lawnmower to go up if that's your thing as well. Now, I don't have any paths that are even vaguely wide enough. And I got my other half in to trim the paths once, and he's only done it once because I went up and I think I cried a little bit because the grass had just been sprayed over absolutely everything. Everything. And I thought, this is a total disaster. So he's never been asked to go back in ever and do that again. That was entirely my fault, though, not his. And bark paths would be ideal if you can get hold of bark to put down to mark the paths out. That would be absolutely ideal because you've got a bit of texture, not quite so slippery, very easy to see where you are, and it'll suppress the weeds as well. So that would be a winner if you could do it. Number 4 is to fence everything. Fence everything really well to keep little munchers out. So deer and rabbits. Unless you use like a super fine mesh or you wall the whole thing, you'll still get things like voles and rats and mice and stuff like that. And obviously, if it's not netted, you'll still get pigeons crash landing in. But you definitely don't want to have deer and rabbits coming through and just eating everything. And also make sure you keep your flowers away from the edges so they don't get nibbled by anybody outside of the plot. So I made this mistake earlier in the year when I thought I was being terribly clever, growing my sweet peas up these harass fence panels, which turned out actually to be a brilliant idea. But on the other side of the fence panels were the ducks. And what they ended up doing was clambering up onto a little piece of wood and topping off a third, a quarter of the sweet peas. So it didn't really matter in the end. The sweet peas branched out and they carried on flowering, and it was an amazing crop. But not a good idea, especially if it had been something that they shouldn't have been eating. So definitely make sure that if you're growing anything up against your perimeter fences, that nobody can eat that either. And number 5, the final point, is water and irrigation. And you're probably sick and tired of me talking about my water bowsers and water and irrigation and stuff. But if you have the resources, time, and money, do set it up properly at the start because it'll save you so much heartache and struggle and time if you don't. If you're able to, I do suggest dotting your water butts around your growing area so you can use the closest one to wherever you happen to be watering. There's nothing worse than having all your water butts or your water bowsers down one end of your growing space, and you have to be either carrying it or paying for loads of irrigation or drip tape or whatever you use to get it to the other side of your plot. Because if anything goes wrong with that system as well, like an irrigation system, there's blockages or somebody slices through it, then you've still got a long way to be transporting water. So if you can divide everything up, I find that to be much easier. So I've got water bowser at one end, I've got 2 at the other end, and I've got a couple of water butts in the middle. And I top the water butts in the middle up from the water bowsers. So wherever I am on the plot, I can go to the nearest water source because I'm still watering by hand because I don't have any power up there. But it means, yeah, it means that I'm watering by hand. I love doing that. It's not a problem for me. It's also good exercise, although my other half said I have arms like a gorilla, which is not the kindest thing he's ever said to me, but he's probably right. But if anything happens and I broke a wrist or anything, I would be in trouble. Anyway, we can't catastrophize. The point is, it's just helpful to dot your water butts around. And if you can, link them up to save overflow from one water butt or a bowser. If you can get them all linked up with little bits of hose pipe, I think that's a brilliant idea. And collect water from every single surface that you can. So I may have mentioned this before, but we built what we call a bus shelter for the chickens because I pinched a bit of land that they were on. They've shifted onto another bit and they needed some shade from the sun or the rain. And so we got a whole load of wooden pallets, screwed them all together, put a bit of wood on top, some felt on, and we made the roof sloping. So, and then there was guttering at the bottom. And from this structure, which is literally two keep saying fence panels, 2 pallets wide and 2 pallets long, so it's basically 2 pallets by 2 pallets, we collect a huge amount of water, really huge, so much water that is filled up the water butt, which is itself 1 pallet high. And then we have another enormous dustbin right next to it. So that's been like a really successful water collecting thing. So you could put any kind of leaning roof structure up. It doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be a shed, or it doesn't have to be anything expensive. It could literally be, you could just get 3 pallets and screw them together and put a sloping bit of wood or plastic or corrugated iron or anything on the top, and a bit of gutter that's going to drain into a water butt. And just one more tip: if you do get a water butt that's going to be sat on the ground rather than raised up, for example, then when you put the drill hole in, just watch the height that you put the little tap in, because if you raise the tap up too high, you'll have water that constantly sits in the bottom of the water butt that you can't get out. So you do need the tap to be as close to the bottom of the water butt as possible. So listen, I think that's it for me. I feel like I've been talking forever. So I hope I haven't bored you to tears there with my tips, but I thought I'll share them with you today because I have learnt some things from this year. Now, I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are and whatever you're doing this weekend. I shall be filling up water bowsers and putting up fence panels and keeping everything watered and deadheading and praying for rain. So I'll be back on Tuesday, and I very much hope you will come and join me. And I put little videos and pictures on Instagram. You can find me there at Hen Hill Cut Flowers. And yeah, I'll also be reading. Yeah, I forgot these 2 enormous books. I'm going to make a start on those. Yes, excellent, once I've had some dinner. So all the very best, and please come back and join me on Tuesday.